Hi everyone, it's the beginning of March and I'm super excited because today I'm doing a massive seed sowing. I'm sowing loads of things because I love sowing seeds. I love watching them grow into little seedlings and then on into plants and producing beautiful flowers throughout the season. It is one of my favourite activities, it really is. You've probably gathered that if you're not new to my channel. If you're new to my channel, my name's Annette and welcome to Cottoverdi. So I'm going to start today sowing linaria. Linaria is also known as Toadflax and I'm sowing a variety called Northern Lights. Linaria or Toadflax, they're these beautiful little miniature flowers that look a little bit like snaps, and they're on long wiry stems with fern-like foliage. And Northern Lights comes in a variety of colours like mauves and blues and pinks, and they look really nice like as a drift, like planting loads together, but they're also really good as cut flowers. They're going to reach maturity in about 50 to 60 days. So I'm sowing some now so that I have flowers in the spring, but then I'm also going to sow some in May so that I have flowers for the July celebration, the wedding celebration we're having in our garden for my son and daughter-in-law. So I'm going to just get on with sowing them. They need to be surface sown. They need about 20 to 30 degrees. So I am going to put them on my heat mats, and they should take between 5 and 21 days to germinate. They normally germinate pretty quickly, to be honest with you. I will cover them with a sprinkling of vermiculite. Now these annuals can be sown anytime between February and April, but also, as I said, I'm going to sow some in May, so they can be directly sown, particularly if you're in a zone that, you know, where you're frost free at the moment. You could just sow them outside. You can sow them outside at any point, actually. In fact, all the seeds that I'm sowing today can be direct sown in your borders. I don't do this because I like to protect them from the slugs and snails. I like to protect them from my cats, which like to dig up my beds. And I also like to be able to position them in amongst other plants that I have in the garden, like perennials and shrubs. So I sow all mine into cell trays. These are the cell trays that I use, and I'm going to be using the same cell trays for all of the seeds that I'm sowing today. They're 8 cell trays, and I'll put a link in the description below because a lot of people ask me about them, but they fit really nicely into a normal hard tray that you'd put a 40 cell tray in, or you know, one of the 15 cell trays that we get here in the UK. So I can fit 4 sets of these 8 cell trays into one of these long ones. And I don't pre-moisten my compost. I just use normal multi-purpose peat-free compost. I don't use seed compost. You can if you want, but you need to remember that seed compost doesn't have any nutrients in it, so you'll need to bump them up to something that has nutrients in them or feed them regularly, whereas multi-purpose compost, the food in here will last 4 to 6 weeks. So that's why I prefer to use it. And the one that I use, the variety I use, doesn't have any particularly big lumps. If it does, I just chuck them out. But you know, if seed falls on the ground outside, it's not falling on seed compost, it's falling on normal compost, and it germinates fine there. So I think normal compost is absolutely fine for my seeds. It seems to work for me anyway. Oh, and I don't pre-moisten my soil. I always bottom water after I've sown the seeds so that they're not dislodged. If you water with a watering can or anything else, that will probably dislodge your nicely placed seeds. So Toadflax seeds are absolutely tiny, and I'm just going to sprinkle them. I cannot be bothered to try to just get one into each cell. And in all honesty, I want more than that. So what I'm going to do is I'll transplant them and divide them up as they germinate, or once they've got their first set of true leaves. So I've just sprinkled a little bit on the top, on the surface of the soil there. And then I'm going to cover with a layer of vermiculite. And the reason I use vermiculite is because, oh, please don't blow in the wind. Oh, don't blow in the wind, it's going to blow all my seeds away. The reason I use vermiculite is because it lets the light through, but it also helps the soil to retain moisture, and it ensures that my seeds have got good contact with the compost underneath. The next thing I'm sowing today is Rudbeckia, and I'm probably slightly late with this because they're about 110 to 120 days maturity. And so what that means is that these are hopefully going to be in flower at the beginning of July. And that's why I've delayed it a bit, because I do want these to be around in the borders and as cut flowers for this wedding celebration we're having in July. So I've kind of delayed my sowing in the hope that these will be flowering just when I need them. It's an experiment, and if it doesn't doesn't work, then we'll just be without the Rudbeckia. Now, Rudbeckia are gorgeous flowers. If you don't know them, they're these pretty daisy-like flowers, mostly yellow, but you can get them in reds and browns. I am sowing a variety today called Irish Eyes, which are these gorgeous yellow flowers with a green eye, which I guess is why they're called Irish Eyes. They're going to get to about 60 centimetres as well, and they will need about 20 degrees plus in order to germinate. So I'm going to have these on the heat mat also. Just putting my tags in there so I don't forget. They are going to germinate between 5 and 10 days, maybe 14 days, so they should germinate quite quickly. But it's really important not to let the seed tray dry out, and in fact, where you plant them in the border, make sure that doesn't dry out as well, or stay on top of the watering, because they won't like it if your soil, you know, gets really dry and cracked. They don't enjoy that, but they do enjoy full sun. So they are easy to grow, although that makes it sound like they aren't. Now, my seed packet is from 2021, and so I am going to heavily oversow these because seeds, the germination percentage, the rate of germination of seeds decreases normally with the age of the seed. So the older it is, the less seeds will germinate. That's typically what happens, not always what happens, but I'm going to oversow in the hope that I get at least 8 plants. Now, I treat Rudbeckia as annuals. Sometimes they come back, but mostly they don't come back for me. And if you wanted to just sow one into the tray, then you could easily do that, because these seeds are actually, they're quite big and they're quite easy to handle. So if you did only want, you know, one in each cell, then just do that. If your seeds are fresher than mine, I think I've pretty much oversown. And again, I'm just going to cover these with some vermiculite, just to help the compost retain moisture more than anything else. But also because I'm outside, I don't want my seeds blowing away in the wind. The next seed I'm sowing is Scabious or Scabiosa, which are also called pincushion flowers because they're these cute little flowers on long wiry stems, but the centre is kind of fluffy. They look a little bit like pincushions, particularly as the contrasting stamens are often like a different colour. And I love Scabious. In fact, they can overwinter for me. They're half-hardy annuals. Some people treat them as perennials. Some of them come back for me, but mostly I re-sow every year so that I've got new strong plants, and they will flower the first year. So you can sow these indoors between February and April. You can direct sow them outdoors after your last frosts. They're going to reach maturity in about 90 to 100 days. So, you know, if you wait till after your last frosts and sow them outside, they'll just flower later. Some of them, by the way, can reach up to 90 centimetres tall, so nearly a metre tall, which I think is quite good. But that does mean that you will find, since they're on long, slender stems, that the plants might need supporting. And I have found that I need to support my plants, my scabious plants. So I'm sowing 4 different varieties of scabious today. One of them is actually a hardy perennial. They're not all the half-hardy perennials. So I've got 3 half-hardy perennials, 1 perennial. I'm going to treat them all exactly the same way. I'm going to make a tiny little hole in the surface of the compost and drop the seed into that, and then wait till it germinates, because they need light to germinate, so I won't cover it. But as the seedling germinates, I'll just kind of push the soil around the little seedling so that it's more supported. They need about 18 to 20 degrees in order to germinate. So I'm again going to put these on my heat mats in my grow room. If you don't have heat mats, just use a kitchen windowsill, or, you know, if you've got a nice sunny warm greenhouse, that'll probably work. We've got glorious sunshine at the moment here in the UK. And they should germinate in about 10 to 12 days, so they won't take long at all. So the varieties I'm sowing today are Burgundy Bow, which is a gorgeous deep purple. I'm sowing Merlot Red, which is this gorgeous, sumptuous red colour. And I'm sowing Beaujolais Bonnets, which is a lovely deep red winey colour. You will sometimes get your scabious. They'll come as these little sort of shuttlecock shapes, and that's fine. The seed is inside. Don't bother trying to take the seed out if it hasn't been done for you. Just plant the shuttlecock, sow the shuttlecock thing. My only problem with the shuttlecock things is sometimes I think that they're empty. It's hard to tell whether you've got a seed in there or whether it's fallen out. I should also mention that the Merlot Red is taller than the other varieties, so the Merlot Red should get to 90 centimetres, whereas Burgundy Bow and Beaujolais Bonnets will get to about 60 centimetres. And then the hardy perennial I'm sowing today is called Perfection Blue, and it will flower the first year. The hardy perennial will flower the first year, And the difference with the hardy perennial scabious is that they're much flatter flowers with less of a fluffy centre. They still do have a fluffy centre. They could take 3 weeks to germinate, to be honest, so they might take a little bit longer, but they are great for cutting. They look absolutely fabulous in floral arrangements, and they look really good in the garden too. I think they're a standout scabious, whereas the annual scabious or half-hardy perennial scabious, they're more sort of a filler flower. The last seeds I'm sowing today are Statice, which are these gorgeous everlasting flowers. They're super easy to grow, but not only do they look great in the border, they look fabulous because they last such a long time in flower arrangements, and they're great for drying because they retain their colour really easily. They're sort of, I describe them as papery, a little bit like straw flowers. So they've got the same sort of texture, maybe a little bit softer, but they look completely different. And I absolutely love Statice. Now you could sow Statice anytime again between February and April inside. I'm sowing mine now at the beginning of March. They'll take between 110 and 120 days to reach maturity. They're going to germinate between 18 and 24 degrees in 7 to 14 days. They really are super easy to grow, and I'm sowing 8 different varieties today. Again, some of my seeds are really old, from like 2021. I just want to finish the packets, so I'm going to sprinkle liberally, but you really don't have to do that, especially if you've got fresh seed. Just put 1 seed into each cell, and then if one doesn't germinate, you can just top it up later. But honestly, you don't need to sprinkle liberally the way I am. I just feel like with seeds that are at least 4.5 years ago, probably 5 years old since they were actually harvested, it's probably best for me to just over sow in the hope that I do get some of these flowers this year, because I really do need them for this wedding celebration. So I'm just going to sprinkle them onto the surface of the compost, and then I am going to cover them with vermiculite. So if you don't have vermiculite, you can cover them with a light sprinkling of compost. That will work absolutely fine too. So these are actually half hardy, and they may survive over winter. If they survive over winter for you, then you're very lucky. Don't forget to deadhead them regularly to prolong flowering. So the varieties I'm sowing today are Iceberg, which will grow, Iceberg which is white, it's going to grow to about 80 centimetres tall. I'm sowing one called QIS Lavender, that's going to grow to 80 centimetres tall also, and that was a really old seed. I'm sowing Sika Blue, which is a lovely deep blue colour. I'm sowing Sika Pastel Blue, which is obviously a lighter colour. It's slightly lavender by the looks of things. I'm sowing Sika Rose Shades, which has got varying shades of rosy pink. I'm sowing a variety called Forever Happy, which is quite short and only grows to 50 to 65 centimetres, but it's a gorgeous light rosy lavender with sunny yellow in it. So it's this real sort of combination of colours that goes so well in flower arrangements with so many things, just because it's got this mix of colours. I think it's gorgeous, and I have grown that before. I'm also sowing Florette's Pastel Mix. These seeds are a little bit old too. They're cool pastel colours like violet, lavender, blush, rose and mauve. And then the last Statice I'm sowing today is Pink Pokers, which has got a completely different structure. It's really different and striking. It's from Turkestan, and it's got these dense vertical spikes of pink flowers, and they're kind of like bendy and wild looking, and I really, really like the look of them. So now that I've sown all the seeds, I'm going to bottom water them and take them through to my seed starting room. So let me show you that. So this is the seed starting room, and this is where they're going to live, on the heat mats. So I've got some of the Statice there already. The rest is currently sitting in the water bath, being watered. And then these are all the other seeds that I've got started. Lights are normally on all the racks, but these ones flash for some reason when I'm filming. I don't know why. I am going to do a seedling update in the very near future. Do let me know whether that's something that you're interested in, because I don't want to produce something that's really boring, but I know that some people ask how my seedlings are doing, so it'd be really nice to be able to gauge whether or not you'd like me to go through how everything's doing, what misses I've had, which ones I've binned already, and which ones still need potting on, because there are quite a few that I still need to pot on. It's so busy at this time of year, isn't it? But I love it. I do love it. I'm not complaining. And some of my ranunculus have got tiny little green shoots. Let me show you. Where are they? here. So some of my ranunculus are already shooting. Not many, I think there's about 4, but it hasn't been long. I'm not panicking, that's, you know, this is normal, but it's just nice to see life, I think. Anyway, I really hope you've had fun with me today. Maybe you want to sow some of these yourself and have some wonderful flowers this season. Do let me know what you're sowing, I'd love to know. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all next time.